The Baltic Sea, a habitat, an economic region, and a magnet for tourists. Beaches and water for swimming, for diving. But deep below lie memories of less peaceful times.
There's everything here from a pistol cartridge to a V1 warhead. Torpedoes, bombs, large shells. Explosives lying exposed in direct contact with the water. A massive toxic waste dump. Hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
A German aerial bomb from World War II, 250 kilos, packed with explosives. It lay on the floor of the Baltic for 8 decades. Dumped after the war on Allied orders, just like millions of other bombs. The deadly weapons should not fall into the wrong hands again. The British and Americans disarmed Hitler's Germany on an industrial scale. One ship after another was sent out into the North and Baltic Seas. The dumped cargo remains dangerous to this day. The research vessel Alcor in Lübeck Bay. Here alone, around 35,000 tons of munitions rest on the seabed. The Alcor is operated by the GEOMAR Helmholtz Centre for Ocean Research in Kiel. For years, scientists on board have been tracking the slow decay of sunken munitions. More and more often, they're detecting traces of explosives in the water, in the sediment, and even in fish. Today, they're heading for a bomb field just off the coast to check the level of contamination.
Bridge to lab, we're ready. Just let us know when we're there, over.
Yep, all clear.
Jens Geinert is in charge of the project. It's painstaking work. For reliable data, he needs samples from many different sites across the seabed.
Everything here has to be meticulously documented. If you end up with 200 stations in 1 week, you'd better keep very good records.
There are no divers on board the Alcor. Instead, the work in the deep is done by a robot. Captain Blaubeer. That's the name of the remotely operated vehicle. It's guided from the surface. And down on the seabed, it can stay much longer than any human diver.
Tim steers the vessel about 40 meters away from the ship to ensure a safe distance before the dive. Once that's done, the team heads inside to monitor the video feed.
The destination? A munitions dump. Software engineer Tim Weiss navigates the robot towards the site.
Okay, I'm diving.
It uses a suction arm to collect water samples, while its camera transmits images from the depths. The mini-sub is returning to a specific target, an explosive device the team discovered 2 years ago. Even then, it was so riddled with holes the scientists gave it a nickname, the Emmental.
That's the Emmental, this yellow thing. And these are others of the same type. You can see one here, it's completely gone. Only the end caps are left. And here too, another one is completely gone. On the Emmental, one of the end plates has fallen off, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are still more or less intact. 80 centimeters in diameter, like a giant barrel, filled to the brim with explosives.
Saltwater and wave motion have corroded the protective metal casing. Exposed beneath, 850 kilos of high explosives, TNT and ammonium nitrate. The scientists believe this is the warhead of a V1 flying bomb, the Nazis' so-called revenge or wonder weapon.
And this is just one side. As we dive around, we'll also take water samples. You can see this is just a piece of the wall, not very thick. When we first saw it, the explosive mass was still almost up to this edge and over to the other side. Now the middle is gone. Right now we're basically inside a toxic cloud with the ROV.
TNT is both highly toxic and highly explosive. The V1 was the first military cruise missile. Because of its enormous charge, it earned another name, the flying bomb. After the war, most munitions were dumped at sea without active fuses. That makes spontaneous detonations unlikely today. But the danger from the toxins slowly spreading through the water grows larger every year. On board, the team is already waiting for new samples from the robot. Geochemist Aaron Beck will analyze them right away. The water was collected from multiple sites, each at a different distance from the V1 warhead. The scientists are certain TNT will show up. In World War II, it was used in a wide range of munitions. Now, it's spreading into the water together with explosive compounds like RDX. The key question is, how much?
That's ADNT, that's RDX, and that's TNT.
We don't have DNB?
No, it doesn't show on the mass spectrum.
Okay. Ah, that's the small mass spectrum.
These are the first three samples from Blue Bear. Very high concentrations of RDX, some ADNT, and also very high TNT.
Even Aaron Beck is surprised by these levels, and he has taken countless samples in the dumping grounds.
We find traces of explosives in almost every sample, nearly every time. But levels like these are rare. These are really among the highest concentrations we've ever recorded.
The levels can rise very quickly, especially when these thin-walled bombs continue to corrode.
So far, only a fraction of the dumped munitions has decayed dangerously. But beneath the surface lies an entire arsenal, rusting, crumbling, and poisoning the water. Like this 2-centimeter ammunition, once used for anti-aircraft guns. Or these large bombs. They've become a habitat for marine life. But it's a toxic habitat. Fish lay their eggs between crates of ammunition and empty mine shells. Flatfish caught in these zones are 4 times more likely to have liver tumors than those from clean waters. TNT is carcinogenic, and it damages genetic material. For now, swimming in the Baltic Sea and eating the fish is still considered safe. But since scientists began monitoring in 2016, contamination levels have steadily increased. Their warning is clear: munitions on the seabed are a ticking time bomb.
I expect that with climate change, the corrosion of the munitions will accelerate, with more frequent storms also playing a role. At some point, concentrations could start rising much faster than they do now. And then we may reach the point where we say, okay, it's no longer safe to eat these fish and mussels.
The longer the munitions remain in the sea, the more poison they release. And the risk of explosion also increases once a bomb becomes as porous as the Emmental.
It's really sensitive. If you're unlucky and drop an anchor on it, it could react and explode.
Even so-called controlled detonations come with serious risks that are hard to manage. The shock waves can kill marine mammals within a radius of up to 1,000 meters. For humans, the danger can also reach the shore, literally burning. Washed up from seabed dumping grounds, what is known as gun cotton. A naval explosive, highly toxic, but it looks like an ordinary stone, brown, gray, or yellow, with a slight sheen. Even more dangerous, white phosphorus, chunks that often resemble amber, a fatal confusion because phosphorus ignites at body temperature, burning at up to 1,300 degrees Celsius. It causes severe burns, and once it turns to liquid, you can't put it out. The solution seems obvious. The munitions must be removed from the sea. Scientists and environmentalists agree. But how do you clear 1.6 million tons of wartime debris from the North and Baltic Seas? Chemical weapons were also dumped here. No one has ever attempted a cleanup of this scale. Now, Germany is preparing to take on the challenge within its territorial waters. The federal government has pledged 100 million euros to disarm the seas. A project unlike any before. The techniques will first be tested in Lübeck Bay. In the dumping grounds of Pelzerhaken North and West and Hafkug lie enormous amounts of scattered munitions, often in waters only 20 meters deep. In Pelzerhaken North, right off the coast, the clearance companies Eggers and Hansa Taucher have been pioneers from the very beginning. Before they could anchor their jack-up platform on tall steel legs, the seabed had to be carefully surveyed for bombs. Because here, they're everywhere. Not just the hydraulic excavator, but also the multifunctional grabber at the end of its long arm is designed for the big mission. The octopus tool, operated by machinist Ulrich Lilienthal. It takes a delicate hand to make sure the rusty weapon scraps don't crumble apart during recovery.
You've got to have a bit of, well, hydraulic oil in your fingers, as I like to say. The tool is really very sensitive. At the same time, it's so heavy, so big and long. The smallest movement and it responds immediately. We've got a pressure gauge here that shows me the hydraulic pressure of the grabber. You can monitor it to make sure you don't squeeze too hard. Then it moves gently and works just fine. Takes a bit of practice and a good feel for the machine.
Ulrich Lilienthal has the munitions under control. In the command center, Oliver Krohn has an overview. He follows the action above and below water and directs the excavator operator.
Uli, can you lower the octopus tool a bit more?
On it, just a moment.
Clearing so many bombs at once is a first, even for these professionals.
No one knows for sure if this will work. It's like space travel. And we're the first to try it in 70 years. It's exciting.
Das ist schon spannend.
It's starting.
Time for Ares, an imaging sonar mounted on the crane. It's meant to deliver live pictures from the depths. Ulrich Lilienthal guides the grabber to the designated spot, and with it, another camera that uses AI to filter out sediment interference. Quickly, munitions become visible.
We're looking at the seafloor from above. Here we can see, for example, a tail fin. Here's the bomb body, another bomb body, and here another tail fin. The bomb is stuck vertically in the seabed, so we're basically looking at the bomb from behind.
Wreckage scattered everywhere, as far as the camera can see. The clearance divers are finding mostly aerial bombs. The dangerous finds are first maneuvered into containers on the seabed, including this aerial bomb. A diver helps stow it. Most importantly, he must check that the bomb has no fuse.
Here's the container rim, here's the lid with the seal, a German aerial bomb is lying inside. That's the fuse opening, the mouthpiece opening. And here's the nose of the bomb.
Spitze der Bombe.
The diver will soon close the lid, seal the container, and it will stay on the seabed until it's taken away for destruction.
The underwater storage containers must be bomb-proof, which is why no more than 2 larger bombs fit in one. All the containers are watertight. At least here, the leakage of toxins into the sea has been stopped. This is how millions of tons of wartime scraps are to be disposed of in the future, on floating demolition platforms, fully automated. The munitions located by remote-controlled underwater vehicles, lifted to the surface by cranes, dismantled in bunker-like facilities, and burned in special furnaces on site. That's the ambitious and globally unique plan. The platforms will cost millions and will run for decades. But there is no alternative. 300,000 tons of World War II munitions lie in the German Baltic and 1.3 million in the North Sea. Regular transport to Germany's only large disposal facility in Münster would be too complex and too dangerous. Even now, the facility is working at full capacity. Ammunition from the sea is also delivered here in large amounts whenever it poses an acute danger outside the dumping zones. For example, during wind farm construction. Between bunkers, blasting chambers, and incineration furnaces, specialists from the Group for Disposal of Chemical Weapons and Military Ordnance work around the clock, storing, dismantling, and burning ordnance from all over Germany. Routine must never set in. Explosives remain dangerous, even if the disposal teams have already defused the bombs. Very carefully, a particularly heavy shell is lifted from its container.
Keep going, keep going.
The head of a German G7 torpedo. Packed with 300 kilos of explosives. A massive charge that must be kept moist at all times. Once dried out, explosives are prone to spontaneous ignition, especially in combination with rust.
Yeah, that's good.
A G7 torpedo is actually 7.17 meters long, but even the warhead alone cannot simply be thrown into the blasting furnace.
So, da ist
Here
das
it is.
Stück. Wir müssen den Torpedo.
We have to clamp the torpedo into our saw.
Wir schieben das Teil also.
We push it towards the blade, measure where to make the first cut,
Messen aus, an welcher Position wir den ersten Schnitt machen.
fix it in place, set the cooling.
Müssen die Kühlung einstellen auf das Ganze.
Then we close the door, leave the room, and from the control center we can start cutting.
Können wir aus dem Leitstand aussägen. Ich messe das gleich
I'll
an.
measure it real quick.
Okay.
The giant saw cuts through calibers up to 1.5 meters in diameter with ease. And if anything goes wrong, the saw bunker can withstand the force of 2 tons of TNT. Even though this colossus has no fuse or propulsion system, Torben Fens and Philipp Hirschele proceed with caution and with cooling lubricant.
Wir kühlen massiv.
We use a lot of cooling. The saw runs at relatively low speed,
Wenig Reibung,
little
wenig-
friction, little pressure. That's important because explosives react to heat and friction.
Wenn wir jetzt falsche Parameter an
If we set the wrong parameters and cause some sort of irritation, the explosive could do what it was designed for: explode.
tun soll und explodiert.
Everyone out of bunker 44, and then it begins.
Ja, moin, hier ist
Hi,
Torben.
this is Torben. Just letting you know we're cutting in 44.
Alles klar, ciao.
From the control room, Torben Fens starts the saw from a safe distance. 200 meters, an earth wall, and thick concrete walls separate them from the torpedo head.
Die Säge ist im Gang. Das kann man relativ schlecht
The
sehen.
saw is running. It's hard to see because the blade speed and the lowering speed are very slow.
Relativ langsam unterwegs sind und da brauchen wir
I estimate it will take about an hour for this size.
für das Kaliber.
Only in time-lapse can you see the saw making progress. If the blade jams or the cooling fails, Torben Fens must react immediately. For an entire hour, he keeps his eyes glued to the torpedo head. The warhead must be cut into 5 segments before it can go into the blasting furnace. The first cut is complete.
Is it stuck at the seam?
Yeah, you can see the brass.
Ja. Ah, okay. Ja, jetzt ist er.
Yeah,
Okay.
now it's off.
So.
Okay, done.
Okay. Das kann man sehen, das ist gegossen.
You can see
das
the
Ganze.
whole thing is
Das ist jetzt
cast.
also diese
So
Sprengstoffmischung,
here's the explosive charge.
die da drin ist. Hier oben den Hohl.
The hollow space you see here is an air
Das
chamber.
ist ein mit Luft gefüllter Raum, damit der Torpedo.
It kept the torpedo stable so that it wouldn't spin, and then it would stay on course.
Der luftgefüllte Raum ist oben,
The air pocket stayed on the upper side and made sure it didn't roll or change direction.
damit der einfach stabilisiert ist und sich nicht wegdreht. Das hier drin.
And here, that's the explosive, the charge, a mixture called gun cotton, made of 4 components.
Gun cotton, the standard explosive for torpedoes and naval mines of the German Navy. TNT provided the detonation power, while other components stabilized the mixture and increased detonation speed. The G7 torpedo was the main weapon of German U-boats in World War II. 7 meters long, carrying about 300 kilos of explosives. Even torpedo heads are corroded by salt water. And so, the toxic gun cotton lies in the sea. In the Baltic, the entire munitions arsenal of the Third Reich can be found. Often so overgrown and decayed that identification is painstaking. Weapons with which the Nazis continued to promote their so-called total victory, even in defeat. Even in 1944, production was ramped up to record levels. Whatever chemicals were still available went into the bombs. After the war, the victorious powers faced a dilemma: what to do with the mountains of weapons, both enemy and their own.
One of the aftermaths of war, when Britain was a veritable arsenal for the Allies, is the disposal of a vast quantity of unused and dangerous ammunition.
A vast quantity of unused ammunition, too much to neutralize, piece by piece.
Look out when you see one of these signs. Much of the ammunition is taken to sea for disposal.
In Lübeck, trains arrived from all over Germany, loaded with weapons from factories and depots. Dumping them at sea seemed to be the easiest solution. Between 1945 and 1949, German captains sailed almost daily to dumping zones.
Das war an Plätzen, die man geschaffen hat.
These were designated sites where no fishing, shipping or other activity would be endangered. And to their credit, the British, mainly under British command, held a conference involving the Admiralty, fisheries, industry, shipbuilders and politicians. They asked, where can we dump this? They didn't just throw it anywhere. They deliberately chose areas that weren't to be used otherwise.
Die damals nicht anderweitig genutzt werden sollen. Also das muss man ihnen hoch anrechnen.
Former naval officer Uwe Wichert searches through old documents for records of the dumping sites. He's a member of the expert group Munitions in the Sea. Records from the National Archives in London. On December 22, 1945, British Colonel Evans noted that hopper barge number 33 had disposed of 152 tons of munitions in Lübeck Bay.
152 Tonnen.
152 tons, that's a lot. They sailed out, dumped, came back. Sometimes 2 or 3 barges went out per day. The British documented it all meticulously. You can look at the notes and follow them day by day. Out there we can find everything, from pistol cartridges to V1 warheads.
But today, these explosive stockpiles are costly obstacles in heavily used areas. Ships must navigate around restricted zones. Subsea cables and pipelines cannot be laid there. Businesses, but also scientists on the Alcor, need to know exactly where the bombs lie and how many there are. To find out, Jens Greinert and his team not only study the environmental impact on the dumping grounds, they also create revealing images of the seabed. With multiple beam sonar scans, they generate detailed depth maps.
These are piles of munitions. This is a heavily contaminated area. You can see the individual objects, marked green. We dove there, so we know for sure it's munitions, not stones.
Munitions, still in their original crates.
Here's an area about 15 by 15 meters, maybe 20 by 20.
A jumble of boxes filled with 2-centimeter anti-aircraft rounds, exactly as they were thrown overboard. The underwater footage shows incredible quantities, yet only the tip of the iceberg. Many piles are buried, 3 or 4 layers deep in the sediment.
The munitions were loaded onto barges. A barge could open its bottom. It was loaded, sailed out, and they dumped everything at once. That's what happened here. Other ships simply sailed out and threw everything overboard. Sometimes you see a line of single shells along the seabed. That's called en route dumping. The ship sailed slowly, tossing them left and right, back and forth, and that's how they lie on the seabed.
En route dumping, the cheapest but also the most disastrous method. Even on the way to official dumping sites, captains got rid of their cargo to save time and money. As a result, much of the munitions ended up much closer to coasts and beaches than planned. Bombs are still discovered there by chance today. View of the sea. Every dive is also a journey into the past. On the Alcor, the job is taken over by AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles. This one is already awaited on the mothership. The diving robot Kalle brings back new data from the seabed, mapped with multi-beam and side-scan sonar. Hard objects reflected the sound waves, quite possibly undiscovered bombs.
We have 3 AUVs in total, and they all have names. It started with Anton and Louise, from a children's book by Eric Kästner. Yeah, we just made it up. And then we thought Pünktchen, it's hard to pronounce in English, so we used the real name Louise. And Kalle is the latest, delivered earlier this year.
Everyone on board has their specialty, including the robots.
Each AUV has its own special skills. Louise can do 2 things at once. Down there, she carries a camera. That's the cylinder you can see here. Around the lens, there's an LED ring to provide light underwater. And at the front, inside the nose, there are 4 magnetometers to detect distortions in the Earth's magnetic field caused by metal. Whenever a metallic object lies on the seabed, it slightly distorts that field.
Now, it's Louise's turn. At a depth of 21 meters, she will photograph the suspicious anomalies. With magnetics, she can distinguish bombs from algae-covered rocks. From now on, she runs autonomously. A crew member reports.
Louise is safely on her mission. Now we hand over to our colleagues.
Deployment successful.
We've just launched Louisa into the water. Now she's taking camera images, and at the same time she's recording magnetic data. She can do both simultaneously. As we can see here, she's following what we call a lawnmower pattern, moving back and forth to capture overlapping photos of the area. Later, the software uses all these images to create a single, seamless image of the seafloor.
The whole picture will only be visible later, but Louise already delivers insights. Every second, she lights up the seabed and perhaps history. Metal detected. Whether it's a bomb is unclear. But there is a magnetic anomaly.
Es könnte Munition sein, es könnte aber auch einfach.
It could be ammunition or just scrap, or it could be a part of the ship. We'll check it out.
Deshalb gucken wir uns das an.
From sonar to imagery, each AUV adds detail. In the end, sharp 3D proof. Yet another munitions dump discovered. Bombs, torpedoes, shells, and cartridges lie thick on the bottom. And new finds keep appearing.
Just an hour ago, we looked at a heap packed with big bombs, 250 and 500 kilo types, lying all over the seabed. That's shocking, even though we're used to it.
All locations go into a database for future clearance. But the Baltic also holds munitions that weren't dumped into the sea after the war. Mines still lurk here to this day. A German propaganda film from 1940. Workers are preparing naval mines. Giant spheres meant to stop the enemy, loaded onto the former passenger ship Tannenberg, now a mine layer.
Eine neue Minensperre wird geworfen und damit das Operationsgebiet der Sowjets in der Ostsee weiter eingeengt.
Tens of thousands of mines were laid in the Baltic by both sides. Every voyage was a gamble, as the fate of the Tannenberg shows. In June 1941, catastrophe struck. In the military archives in Freiburg, Uwe Wichert searches records from those days. Thousands of old documents here contain key information about ships, operations, and bombs. Blueprint of a moored mine. About 1,600 formed the Wartburg barrier to Sweden's Öland, a regular area for the Tannenberg. In July 1941, she aimed for a narrow gap in an ever-denser minefield.
Germany had asked Sweden to mine the gap between the Wartburg barrier and Öland as well. And the Swedes did. But there was one thing no one had taken into account. Sweden claimed territorial waters of 4 nautical miles, while internationally only 3 were recognized. That meant their mine barrier was laid further out to sea than expected.
Fatal miscalculation. On July 9th, 1941, the Tannenberg and 2 escort ships entered what they thought was a safe passage and misjudged it.
This is the Tannenberg's war diary.
Von dem Minenschiff Tannenberg.
Commander von Schönemark noted light wind, slight sea, moderate visibility.
Up to the latitude of Öland, nothing seemed unusual. The mine barrier was guarded by a Swedish minesweeper. When the German ships approached, the Swedish vessel hoisted a signal. According to the International Signal Code, it meant, "Fire on board, need assistance." Why it gave that signal remains unclear. After a while, the signal was taken down. Then, as the ships, among them the Tannenberg, came closer, a new signal appeared. Mines ahead, turn to port and await further orders. But at the very moment the message was deciphered, the Tannenberg struck the first mine.
The escort ships were rocked by explosions as well. The commander wrote, "From the force of the second detonation, we assume the ship hit not one but two mines. Some of the badly injured crew were rescued by Swedish ships. At 1940, the ship sank."
It means the minefields worked against our own ships too.
Wiechert himself later cleared remnants of the barrier, but elsewhere, mines remain, deadly to this day. A moored mine consists of the anchor, cable, and mine sphere. Detonation occurs by contact, acoustic sensors, or magnetic triggers. There are up to 300 kilos of TNT inside. These particular mines have no fuses. Along with ground mines and torpedoes, they've laid some 80 years in a dumping zone near Kiel. Almost part of the ecosystem. But in World War II sea battles, they were lethal weapons. The goal then was to hit ships, troops, weapons, supplies. But the Allies soon attacked from the air.
Fliegeralarm! Schon auf weite Entfernung werden die Feindflugzeuge bekämpft.
Anti-aircraft guns tried to neutralize the danger overhead.
Da oben ein Brite.
But propaganda films couldn't hide reality. Bombs targeted not just ships, but the Navy's heart, the harbors. Kiel was crucial to Nazi war production. 3 major shipyards built cruisers and U-boats here. From here, they sailed also via the canal linking the seas. The city became an early Allied target. To this day, duds are found in the harbor and shipping lanes. Clues to such duds often surface in old records.
What do we have here?
Geologist Alina Dahlmann and Uwe Wiechert search on behalf of the Environment Ministry in Kiel.
As a major naval base of the Kriegsmarine, Kiel was a prime target. At first the attacks were selective, but by 1942 that changed. The focus shifted from targeted strikes to widespread bombing. By then the Allied forces were deeply frustrated with Germany's ongoing war of aggression. So they decided to destroy not just key installations, but entire areas, moving away from attacks on the eastern side of the fjord, where the shipyards were, toward the large-scale devastation of the whole city.
Just as German bombers had terrorized civilians abroad, now the war in the air reached and devastated the Reich. About 1.6 million tons of bombs fell on Germany.
It was the British that made the Germans realize that war could be brought to German soil too. Day after day, night after night,
The bombing aimed to demoralize the population. Hardly any city was spared. In Kiel, on the night of July 24, 1944, patrol ships reported a massive wave of attacks. The commander of the Western Baltic recorded the events in his war diary.
Then he wrote, on the 24th at 1:10 a.m., attacked by 500 to 600 aircraft, rolling bombardment of Kiel.
More records confirmed that night.
The coastal commander responsible for the anti-aircraft defenses drew the flight charts. We have the air raid reports, and we have this approach map of the two major bomber formations that eventually struck Kiel.
That night, 3,000 HE bombs, 100,000 incendiaries, and 67 naval mines fell on Kiel and the fjord. From the town hall tower, the alarm post Detlef Böck observed the firestorm, noting,
just before the first bombs fell, the radio announcer said they were probably sea mine laying planes. Then all hell broke loose. The bombardment lasted from 1:10 to 1:35, an awful 25 minutes.
By war's end, 80% of Kiel's naval and shipyard facilities were in ruins. Aerial photos show the full extent of the damage.
This is the destroyed city of Kiel. You can see that only skeletons of the buildings remain. Most of the destruction was caused by incendiary bombs, not by blast waves tearing down entire structures, but by fire.
This was likely the last aerial mine on Kiel. 6 days before the war's end, British soldiers posed with the infamous HC-4000, the blockbuster. Its massive blast leveled buildings ahead of the incendiaries that followed. With their phosphorus filling, they created infernos in homes and streets. The HC-4000 was among the largest World War II bombs, and its size makes unexploded duds dangerously unstable even today. Weight, 1.8 tons. The casing was so thin that 80% of it was explosive, TNT or Torpex. A massive charge, making recovery or defusing extremely hazardous, especially if the fuses are intact. Navy divers found an HC-4000 where warships anchor today, close to ferry and cruise routes. It was the largest bomb ever defused by Schleswig-Holstein's disposal service. An even bigger bomb was the British Tallboy, 6 meters long, 5,450 kilos. It could penetrate bunkers with ease. A true monster that could only be detonated in place. This mega dud lay for decades in the mud off Świnoujście, right in the fairway. Defusing it on land would have been an unthinkable risk. Ordnance expert Philipp Hirschele is working on smaller calibers, cutting open a World War II shell recovered from the Baltic. Only 8 minutes to slice through, but a safety distance is essential. The shell holds just 100 grams of TNT in the top, but it still has a fuse and propellant, a known risk.
We can see the nitrocellulose powder in the form of sticks. I'll pour it out. They may look harmless, but they pack a serious punch. Once ignited, they produce an enormous amount of gas, truly an unimaginable volume. All of this happens inside a sealed barrel ignited from the rear. The propellant burns rapidly, generating immense pressure, which forces the projectile out through the front of the barrel. The explosive charge sits behind the fuse. That small point here, that's the tracer, built into the fuse itself, with the main explosive behind it.
Explosive and propellant are later burned in the furnace. Toxins are filtered, metal recycled. But the 8.8 centimeter anti-tank shell holds more.
Nitrocellulose produces enormous amounts of gas, but is difficult to ignite. So small bags of black powder were often placed at the bottom. These are the original markings: 6.7 kilograms of propellant, dated 1944, week 18. This is authentic, untouched since then. It was produced for the war and ended up here. I'll pull this out. Here's the propellant charge, the nitrocellulose. And down here, there's probably a small bag of black powder. There might even be some lead left inside. Yeah, there it is. These are the black powder pellets. That's how they built it. Now we've got the full propellant charge and the shell, and we'll pack them up for the blast furnace.
No more than 3 kilos of net explosive per batch. More could blow apart even an armored furnace. In the end, all that remains is harmless scrap. But in the sea, the poisons continue to spread. Scientists on the Alcor now take sediment samples at sites where clearance companies worked the week before. It's part of the pilot project. They even secured phosphorus from incendiary bombs there and left an underwater warning sign.
We're checking whether this activity has affected the seafloor, the marine life. Did they all swim away? Have their numbers increased? Or did everything suddenly die, to put it dramatically? That's why we're doing this, to find out if the clearance work had an impact on the environment. We already know that the munitions had an effect, but how big is the impact of the clearance? That's the question.
Later, analysis showed the pilot project did not further harm the environment. In any case, there's no alternative to clearance.
2 years ago, I said, metaphorically speaking, it was 20 past 11. Now it's half past 11, so it's slowly starting. We're still lucky, it's not midnight yet, we're ahead of the wave, but the wave is coming. If we keep going with this project over the next decade, we can truly make a difference.
The project's methods could be a model. Many nations dumped munitions off their coasts. Their underwater dumps are also corroding, slowly but surely.
Other countries are watching us. What is Germany doing? Does it work? Is it effective? Which technologies are being developed? Are they successful? They're watching closely.
Clearance is pioneering work. So far, it has cost a lot of money. But with old bombs and new technology made in Germany, there may also be business opportunities. One thing is certain, people and the environment would benefit from seas free of munitions.